A very good morning to all of you. And I'm really delighted to be back at the GTS. To come back year after year to see a summit like this grow is really a very good feeling. You are right, Rudra, that I did push it in the early years. I'm not sure it was very gentle, but the fact is really, when I look at the reach and the impact, there's sort of a lot of satisfaction in it. I hope you'll keep growing. I think the theme which has been picked is particularly timely because today technology is very much at the heart of geopolitics. You could, of course, argue that it was always so. It was always so because, whether it was nuclear or whether it was space or the internet or artificial intelligence, it's actually, if you look at the quantum jumps in history, the quantum jumps in history parallel with some time lag quantum jumps in technology. And it's not just in the modern era. You can go back to metallurgy, you can go back to shipbuilding, you can go back to aviation. That is really the story of both human progress and, in a sense, of competitive national politics. And it has led to a number of policy outcomes. Countries have fashioned their national security decisions. They have made decisions about what kind of influence they will get by applications of technology. And it's not just applying technology, it's also sometimes restricting it, it's steering it. In fact, in a sense, when I was thinking about the subject today, I was reminded of my own PhD, which was about 45 years ago. The subject I started off was really how US decision makers who were poised to peak the Manhattan Project. They knew they had something very big in their hands. And they are now debating among themselves, what are the geopolitical implications of this? Have we given too much to the Russians or Soviets at that time? How does it change our strategy to bring the Pacific theater to a close? So the reason I sort of highlight that as an opening remark is really that, when we think today of competitive politics, sharper contradictions, I think we should be more and more cognizant that it's going to be driven by technology and also be visible or be reflected in the technology debates. Now, I had 6 basic points to make today. One, and I say this especially to my own friends and colleagues and people in India, we cannot be agnostic about technology. And we have to stop pretending that there's something neutral about technology. Technology is no more neutral than economics or any other activity, and you may speak about whether it is data or oil, or oil as data as the new oil. The fact is, more and more things are technologically driven, and we need to understand that there's a very strong political connotation which is inbuilt really into technology. Orthodox way of looking at it would be to go into the world of export controls and technology controls, which is still very, very relevant. In fact, in the last few weeks and months, it has become even more so. But even, I would say, technology in terms of how you influence politics and how you actually shape decision-making in different societies. My second point would be, for technology and geopolitics, the obvious big picture context is globalization. If you look at globalization, in essence, I mean, what is globalization? It is about economy, it is about technology, it is about mobility. So we have to understand today the globalization big picture is very much at the heart of geopolitics. And it's a false argument to present it as, are you for globalization or against globalization? I don't think today anybody can be against it because it's such a deep reality. I think the right argument is, are you for collaborative globalization, or are you for a globalization model which allows domination by a few players? And so how flat, or in a sense, and how broad is your globalization model? I think that, to my mind, is the real debate. And that debate is going to be very much driven by technology. And therefore, to my mind, neither technology nor globalization should be considered really economic issues. I think they're very strategic issues. As a political scientist, I regard them as a political science issue rather than an economics issue. My third point, we live in an era where, in many ways, the Westphalian model of international relations is over. For us, in this era of technological interpenetration, to say that, all states are equal, everybody is a black box, and it doesn't matter what happens inside that black box. It does matter what happens inside the black box. I think we people, especially in India in the last 2.5 years, have woken up to the fact, where does our data reside? Who processes, who harvests our data? What do they do with it? I think that's a very, very key question. And when we look at our partners, whether it's technology partners, strategic partners, political partners, I think the quality of partners and the sociology of partners, I think is a very, very important point. All partners are not the same. And therefore, today, trust and transparency have become key issues. We have, in a domain like telecom, already seen in India the concept of a trusted provider. I think in the digital side, we are going to hear more and more the concept of trusted geographies. So the moment you start talking trusted geographies, the geopolitical connotation of that is very, very clear. My fourth point, just as the Westphalian model has started to become less relevant, obviously when it comes to supply chains, the Nagoya model has also started, I think, to become less relevant. Between COVID, conflict, and climate change, just in time is just too risky. So the world, and I think particularly large countries with deep interests, are actually moving to a just-in-case approach rather than a just-in-time approach. And a lot of economic choices and technology choices are going to be driven by a just-in-case approach. So if you actually have resilience and reliability in supply chains, and you have trust and transparency when it comes to data, I would suggest if you add these two concepts up, you're going to, the outcome you're going to get is a very different geopolitical outcome than it used to be before. The fifth point I would make is regarding India itself. Our sense of technology in the past has been very narrow, and I speak here particularly from a governmental perspective. Typically, if you ask people in government, what's your sense of strategic technologies, they would say, well, defense, nuclear, space. I think that's like 50 years out of date. Today, there's a completely different world there, where the building of deep strengths is actually going to determine our capabilities. So to my mind, in a way, what we in India call Atmanirbhar Bharat, which is like a self-reliant India, you can say a kind of an economic strategic autonomy. That is today going to be key for global rebalancing. That big players are going to consciously strive to be technologically more I don't want to be self-sufficient, but technologically more capable, in order for rebalancing to actually take place. And finally, geopolitics ultimately does come down to partners and choices, and with whom do you have what relationship of what consequence. You know, there are different ways you can slice up multipolarity. You can look at multipolarity, you know, who are your key partners politically? Who are your key partners in trade? Who are your key partners in energy? And the answer will always be very different. So when it comes to technology, because technology is going to be a key criteria today, I would say our key partners, and this is an Indian view, or this is my view of what should be India's view, which is, I feel, who gives us access, number one, who is our collaborator, and who is our market. To my, to my view, these should be the criteria of, which direction the needle should move. And if you look at India's geopolitical positioning, I would say it should be a kind of a net assessment of politics, of energy, of economics, but increasingly of where our technological interests lie. And our positioning should really give a substantial weight to that technology factor. So let me just conclude by saying that when we speak about the rise of India, the rise of India is deeply linked to the rise of Indian technology. I think Rudra spoke about semiconductors. It could be semiconductors, it could be 5G and onwards, it could be AI, it could be more commercial space launches and satellite fabrication. But in the world that we are in today, I would still say there might be greater disorder under the heavens, but there is more opportunity in that disorder. So once again, thank you all for being here this morning, and it's a great pleasure to speak to you.